So today we're going to be learning how to bake up an Oreo cake together with an Oreo buttercream frosting. Hi everyone, my name is Mishade Oshiemi and I am the creative director behind the brand called Zest. Do kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel using the icon showing up on your screen. Follow this channel, of course, spread the word, and turn on your notifications so that for every content I drop, you'll be the first to get a hang on it. So let's dive right into it. Now the first thing we're going to be doing is to prep the dry ingredient and set that aside. And that's just going to basically consist of the flour. I'm going to be sieving this right as the video is on now. So we're going to be putting the flour into the sieve and sifting it out to get out every air pocket that might be trapped in. Next up is the corn flour, going right into it. And then of course, you're going to have some baking soda and some baking powder. This recipe has an option of you adding salt if you intend to use unsalted butter in the recipe, but I'm going to be using salted margarine for the purpose of this video, so I'm omitting the salt. But if you decide to use salt in the recipe, you're just going to be using half of a teaspoon of salt in the same recipe for the same quantity I'm making now. Now this measurement is going to make up 2 flat pans of an 8 inches well, and then after doing this, you can just give this a quick whisk to get all the ingredients incorporated together, and then you set that aside for later use. So the next thing we're going to be doing is to be getting a quantity. This is about 14 pieces of Oreo cookies. I'm going to be pouring that on my chopping board. I'm just going to be trying to chop that very lightly, not necessarily into fine crumbs, so that there's still some sort of texture, but not too big so it doesn't get too clumpy or too chunky in the batter. And please don't use a food processor for this particular type of chopping of the Oreos, because you are more likely going to get it to be too processed somehow. We're going to still be using a food processor later in this video as part of the frosting that we're going to be using for the Oreo buttercream frosting. But for now, strictly use a knife or just a crusher if you have one, to get this exact kind of sizes of Oreo bits that I have coming up. Okay, so that is all done now. So we're going to be setting this aside. Preferably I could pour this in this container, but I'll just rather leave it since I'll be using it very shortly. The next thing I'm going to be doing now is to add up the butter into a mixing bowl. Now you can decide to use your hand mixer or your stand mixer for the purposes of this video, but for me, I'm using my hand mixer just because the quantity of this butter isn't so much. It's just 1 butter, and then my mixer is big, and then it will have a little bit of a difficulty getting the K-beater to go right into it to get the good hang on it that I would want. So I'll use my hand mixer to walk through the process. After adding the butter, then I'll go ahead to add the vegetable oil right after it, everything into it, and then immediately go in with the sugar. And then I'm going to go ahead to get this mix for about 2 minutes just to give it a bit of a mix. And so after this, the next thing I'm going to be adding is the eggs. I'm going to be adding the eggs one at a time. So I deliberately did not crack the eggs before, behind camera, because I intend to add it one at a time. So once you add the first one, you beat it till well incorporated before you then add the next one and then the third one, to make sure that it is thoroughly incorporated. And then this is how we'll go now. So this is the first one. I'm cracking this in. All right, set that aside. I'll beat this in for just about 30 seconds or thereabout, just to make sure it is well blended in. Turn it off again. Repeat the process with the second egg. Right, make sure you don't have your shells going into it. I'm going to repeat the process with the third egg, but before I go ahead to beat it in, I would then one more time scrape the sides again to make sure that whatever is stuck on right the sides of it gets into the dough, into the batter. So now we're done. In anything we're doing with this cake, make sure you don't over mix, and make sure that you don't get tempted to stay on with your hand mixer feeling like, oh, there's still more time to make. So stick to the timing. The overall mixing time for this particular stage is just about 1 minute in a total of it. So next thing I'm going to be doing now is to be adding half of my buttermilk. Now I'm going to be dividing this into two. I might choose not to divide it, but for the purpose of this video, I'll just put half of the measurement, because the total quantity of the buttermilk is 1.5 cups. So to make sure that it's all mixed in together, I'm just trying to work it through, and then I will divide it into two, not necessarily measuring the second time, but just to make sure that I have a bit of a fraction of it here. So I will be pouring that right into the mix now. Okay, and then following this right after with the vanilla flavor goes right in, and then the bit of 1 teaspoon of white vinegar that goes into it. Don't worry, you'd get the full recipe in the description box. So I would mix this in very briefly like this, and this is the point where I stop using the hand mixer. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be pouring the flour mix, the combination mix of dry ingredients, in 2 additions. I'll start up with the flour. Start up with the first batch of flour, goes into it, right? I fold this in very gently, making sure not to over mix, folding in just until combined. So the flour is going into 2 additions, but alternating with the milk, the buttermilk rather. So I'm going to fold this in just like this till it's well combined, and then I would add the remaining bit of buttermilk all at once, and then I'd finish it up with the remaining batch of the dry ingredients. Okay, so this is it. Make sure not to over mix, because that is very important for you to get the desired result that you intend. So let's continue. So at this point, I'm going to be adding the final batch of the dry ingredients into it now, and then I'll be folding that in also, just like this. So you could use your firm but gentle strokes to achieve your results. At this point, just making sure that everything is well combined. This is what it looks like. And then we'll go ahead to add all of the chopped Oreo cookies into the mix now. And this is going to be the last ingredient that goes into the batter. So for those of you that want to know the difference in my Oreo cookies cake that I'm teaching you now and my cookies and cream cake that I've taught in the past, you need to go and look for the post where I have my cookies and cream. You watch it from the beginning up until the end for you to know the slight differences but few similarities that they both carry. And trust me, they have 2 different tastes, because hey, this one has butter base and the other one has no butter in it at all, so you know that the difference is going to be there. So that's going to be all for the batter, and this is what we have. This is our result. Not runny, not overly thick, but just firm enough. So at this point, I'm going to be distributing this into 2 8-inch pans already prepped. Use your butter to prep the pan, and then you add your flour to make sure that there is a good friction that would make it come out once it's done. So can you see that I dusted it only very lightly? I don't have any particles of flour inside of it. It is very clean but well, prepped. So we're going to go into sharing this into the pans. Get an entire measurement of this entire batter and then just divide it into 2. But for the purpose of time, I'm just going to be distributing this into. So done with that now. So I'm just going to try and distribute it to get round to the edges, so I don't have a cake that comes up with a domed center. All right, so after doing this, remember I already preheated my oven, so I'm just going to go right into popping it into the oven, and it's going to bake for approximately 44 to 45 minutes depending on the intensity of your oven. And then it's going to be ready when the toothpick or tester inserted at the center of the cake comes out quick, squeaky clean, nothing serious. And then we have it ready to go into the oven now. So I'll be back to show you when it is ready, and then we can go on with the frosting part of the video. Okay, so our cake is ready now, and as you can see what it looks like. See, very nice. I've allowed it cool for a few minutes. That's why I can handle it like this. So I'll go ahead to flip it now, just like this. And there you have that. This is the first one. Then repeat the process with this one too. So the next thing we're going to be doing is to be prepping the Oreo crumbs that we're going to be using inside the buttercream. So I'll just simply get my blender like this, and I have about 12 pieces of Oreos here together with the cream. So all I'm going to do is just to pour it into the blender and blend it till it has fine crumbs. So it's ready now, and this is what it looks like. So I'll just transfer it right back into the bowl and set that aside for later use. So I'm setting this aside. So I'm also going to process another batch of Oreo cookies, this time without the butter sandwich, because this is the one I'm going to be using as a decorative, crumbs around the sides of the cake. So, yeah. So that's also done. Now this is drier, as you see. Both of them are Oreo crumbs, but the difference between this one and this one is this is a bit moist and this is totally dry. That is because this has the butter sandwich all added to the cookies before blending, and then this is plain, and this is the one that's going to be for the side, and this is the one that's going to go into the buttercream. We're going in first with the butter. We're just going to put this and then let this beat for about a minute just to get it incorporated with air and to soften it. And then next up, we're going to go in with the icing sugar. Keep going, and I'm going to beat this until it is lightened in texture and in color. So at the end of the day, it's not going to look this bright yellow. Once it's ready, it's going to lighten in color. So at this point, I go ahead to add the vanilla flavor. This is 1 tablespoon, and this is half of a tablespoon. Goes right in, and then, first of all, I bring it out. Try and see what it looks like on the inside, just to walk around the sides of the cream. So once I'm done with that, I'll just return it to get the vanilla flavor incorporated in again. Right, yeah, then just about another 1 minute. So right around now, I'm going to be adding the heavy cream. So at this point, you can decide to add heavy cream, or you can just decide to use milk. All right, so depending on what you have in your at your disposal, but I'm using heavy cream today. It's going to give you the same result, but this is what is going to lighten the texture of the cream and give it a slight creamy taste that it's supposed to have. Okay, so it's cream, so it's a bit thick, but if you were to use milk, it's going to be a bit more runny, but doesn't mean it's going to give you a different result. That's why I'm trying to get it out from the cup. But basically, it's just going to give it a smoother and a more malleable texture to be able to work with easily. So I'm going to close it now, and I'm going to put it on again to get the cream incorporated once again. We're going to work this around the sides very briefly to get it easy to incorporate the Oreos, and then I'm just going to go ahead to add the Oreos all at once like this, and then there's going to be one more time to beat it and we'll be good to go. Okay, so at this point the cream is ready, and I'm just going to scrape off whatever it is that is stuck to the beater right into the bowl, and then give it a quick mix with a spatula just to make sure that everything is well incorporated. The cream is ready now, and this is exactly what it looks like. So the presence of the Oreos in it has altered the color as it's supposed to do, and then we have the tiny bits of Oreos showing through the body, through the cream, so that when you spread around the sides of the cake, the beauty will actually come out better. So now just going to set this aside. So at this point, what we would need for this stage is the trimming knife. Now, trimming the sides of the cake is just for aesthetics, really. It's not really very significant, but I always do a bit to make sure that every dry part of the cake doesn't get into the cake. So I always trim very lightly. So you're going to be using the knife to level the surface, and of course to trim the sides if you want to do that. And then of course I'm going to be using my scraper to smoothen out the sides of the cake, and of course my palette knife to work on the cake, the cream, and then I'm going to be adding some chunks of the Oreo cookies as well on top of the middle layer of the cake to add some extra texture and crunch when you cut through it. So we'll go right into it now. So I just pick any one of the two in no particular order. So the first thing I'll do is to get out every bit of, because really I always believe that this dry part of the cake, this bottom side of the cake, even if anyhow it is a combination of butter and flour. So I always try the best I can to get it out, even if it's just to scrape it very lightly, so that as much as possible your clients would get the optimum texture and taste. So all you need to do is get a considerable quantity of cream over the surface of the cake, and then just smoothing this, not compressing it, just smoothing it very lightly, but with strokes that are firm enough to get it well distributed over the surface of the cake layer, as you see me do here. And then, despite the fact that we can see some chunks of Oreo cookies still in the cream, I would still then go ahead to add up these chunks to add up some extra texture to make it an Oreo cake true and true. So we do this, and then of course I get to smoothen it in so that it gets distributed at every angle, and then everyone can have a share of that. Just like this. Get a bit to just seal it up like this. And then I go in with the second layer. This time around, the first one, I started with the bottom side on the board, but this time around the top layer is going to go face down, because I'm trying to make sure that the surface, the overall surface is very leveled and nice. So I'm going to go this way to make sure that you see that. But what I'm trying to do now, like I said, is just to even it out and make sure that I get rid of every unwanted part of it that I might not like. So I'm just going to stop right here. Okay, I'm sure from the video you can see very clearly how soft yet firm the cake is. It's not crumbly, it's not exactly moist, but it's just really fluffy. So now I'm going to repeat the process. Go in with some on the surface. Okay, so once we are done with this, nothing too serious. Once we are done with this, I then begin to apply around the body. Remember, it's an Oreo cookie buttercream, so you don't expect an overly smooth side, because the chunks of Oreo still in the cream will definitely pop in and come out at different times. Exactly like this. So that's what we have. And so at this point now, this is where this comes in handy. I will take just a bit at a time and just plaster around the sides of the cake like this, just like this. I'll do this till I get to the end of the cake. Oops. Just like this. Okay. Just keep going in no particular order. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to be piping around the border of the cake using my Wilson 1M star tip to pipe rose swirls on the top of the cake, and I'm going to go around. I'm going to be using this mini Oreos for the toppings to finish off the cake nicely. So the mini Oreos going in. Guys, that was absolutely delicious. I can't even explain how so nice it tasted in my mouth, melting in the mouth, and absolutely delicious. So that said, that's going to be all for today. So if you want to try this recipe, make sure you follow the step-by-step guide as I explained on the very beginning of this video up until now for you to get that amazing result. That said, that's going to be all for today. I hope you enjoyed watching and learning something today. Do well to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hit the click on the notification button to get notified anytime I drop any content like this. And most importantly, if you have any topic you want me to treat or any recipe you want me to teach, let me know in the comments so that I can attend to it as fast as I can. Till next time, I remain your favorite baker girl, Famous Dessertsville. Bye for now.